Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's your purchase and pricing email question line for this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing a lovely Rolex Oyster Perpetual Day-Date reference 18078. This is a 6.5 million serial number, circa 1981, so a true vintage piece. This is known as the single quickset era, sometimes the transitional Day-Date. So let's talk about the basics. 36 millimeters in diameter in yellow gold. The watch is 12.1 millimeters thick, 43.7 millimeters from lug to lug, with a 47.3 millimeter end link to end link total distance across the wrist. The spacing between the lugs is 20 millimeters. Back in the first half of the 20th century, Rolex decided that the 36 millimeter case size would be a man's case size. And you can see on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, it works fine for that. But I've got so much clearance on each side, there's no hint of even a lug overlap. You could wear this watch on a wrist as small as 13 centimeters circumference, making it a power watch for both him and for her. You can see how much clearance I have. The lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist. It's also flat enough to easily fit underneath the cuff, so if you want a dress watch, this is a great one. Okay, this is an unusual treatment that was seen rarely and only really in a narrow period of time, principally this single quickset generation. That's where I tend to see this bark finishing. So you have this fine and irregular texture around the bezel and also down the center links. It's not the regular machining you see on the engine-turned bezel, and it's not the fluting that you traditionally see on gold Rolex bezels and more recently platinum Rolex bezels. This is a pattern that's designed to mimic tree bark, and hence it is described as the bark bezel and bark bracelet. The President bracelet is formally called the President. The watch, created in 1956, has often been described as the Rolex President or Presidential model because of its famous and sometimes infamous previous owners, but the bracelet was always formally named the President, whereas the watch has always been, properly speaking, the Day-Date. The President's a three-link design with satin-finished outers in this generation, satin-finished shoulders, bark centers. There's a conforming end link to better integrate it to the case, and then it's got a little bit of taper down from the end link. We have a friction-fit clasp here. It is the crown clasp. It snaps shut with good tolerances, and the crown is the only visible partition point between the two sides of the bracelet. That's why it is called the crown clasp. We have a little bit of an anachronistic case finishing. Today, when you see a Day-Date, the case flanks are polished and the lug hoods are polished. Back then, when this watch was made, the lug hoods were satinated, so it looks a little bit different, even though the overall profile is very familiar. We have a twin lock crown in gold. You know that because it has two dots on it. It's a screw down. The watch in its day was 100 meters water resistant. Today, I wouldn't chance it. It's a true vintage piece. There are better Rolex watches to take swimming. Even in its day, it had a sapphire crystal. The Day-Date was one of the first Rolex model families to gain this upgraded and more durable crystal material, casting plexiglass into the past and picking up where essentially the modern era of watch materials begins. So we have sapphire here and sapphire for the magnifier. The dial base is wood. So here this watch is double wood, bark, and then literally Burled Walnut on the dials. The dial is literally Burled Walnut. It's a lovely marbled pattern with several gradients of brown, a handsome and unique aesthetic. No two of these are exactly alike. Rolex did unusual things with the Day-Dates back then. Lapis Stella dials, you had the wood dials, you had all sorts of crazy case treatments and bezel treatments like bark. You had the Tridor bracelet. There was a lot going on in the Day-Date family back then, and this wood dial is one of the best things from the era. Now, the dial features applique yellow gold indices, yellow gold crown, and then yellow gold frame for the gold-tinged discs showing the day and the date. We'll do a quick lume shot. Though the watch dial is signed tritium, properly speaking, the dial was never actually loomed. At some point at Rolex, this watch received a service replacement set of Luminova hands, so that's why they glow, but the dial is all original. Now, the watch includes some subsidiary setting modes, one of which is that pioneering single quickset feature. Previously, if you wanted to set your Day-Date and it had stopped for a while, you had to get lucky with the calendar or you'd be spinning the hands quite a bit. Well, here we do have a single quickset, not for the day, but for the date. And note the use of open sixes serif heavy fonts, and open nines. A lot of folks like that. We do have a hacking or stop seconds function, so you can set the watch precisely to a reference time. And then underneath the solid case back, take a quick look at the depth of the hallmarks. They're quite distinct. We have a Rolex caliber 3055. So single quickset hacking seconds, bidirectional automatic winding, 48-hour power reserve, 5-position adjusted, COSC Swiss chronometer. It's free sprung with a Rolex balance using microstella variable polar moment nuts for the adjustment, and it uses an overcoil hairspring for better resistance to positionally induced or gravitationally induced timing deviation. It has a single-sided balance cock rather than the later full balance bridge, and it pivots on 27 joules. So this is a movement that is interesting as a bridge between the zero quickset era of the Day-Date and the modern era of the double quickset. This was also the first Day-Date movement to operate at 28,800 vibrations per hour, a modern 4 Hz beat rate. So reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.